We've all seen and know that Matt Armstrong is incredibly skilled and creative when it comes to repairing supercars, but sometimes things get out of hand. Here's one such instance. Let's watch him repair 2023 Ferrari 296 GTB. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed. Let's get this Italian powerhouse in the works. The car crashed into Ferrari itself for repairs, but the shocking part was that the factory refused to fix it because the repair and labor costs were too high. According to him, Ferrari has never repaired a car this badly damaged before. So Matt Armstrong, as usual, decided to take a risk and film the repair process on YouTube. He bought the completely wrecked Ferrari and decided to take on the challenge. The purchase was for $133,000. Either the project will succeed and he'll get a Ferrari 296 at a reasonable price, or he'll lose a huge gamble in front of everyone. All the repairs failed, and this story has never happened before. So literally, this was a real test of Matt and his team's abilities to rebuild a supercar of this size. To understand the size we're talking about, the Ferrari 296 GTB is one of the newest and most powerful cars Ferrari has ever produced. It relies on a 3000cc V6 turbo engine with an electric motor, meaning a full hybrid system. The total power reaches 830 horsepower, which is an insane number considering the size and shape of this car. I remember the American YouTuber Haggerty, when he tried it out, describing it as trifling fast, or frighteningly fast. The main reason for this accident is that the traction control system was engaged while the driver was driving, which is what the driver did and even filmed. The accident itself happened in Uber, but the auction is offering the car in the UK, so this is the first time the team has seen the car in real life. He had seen it before, but he still hadn't informed the team about all the problems with this version. Right now, the most important thing is that the car gets moving. The engine is faulty, so the only solution is to push or roll the car onto the trailer, as it will be shipped in a container to Greece and from there back to the UK. It's clear that there are no suspension parts on the front right. Ferrari removed all the suspension parts when they were pricing the repairs. Because they need the car to run, they brought all the suspension parts that need replacing. The first thing they arrived with was the internal steering system, which is attached to the steering wheel. They removed the rubber cover and, using special tools, loosened the connection. Luckily, the car is in a Ferrari workshop and they are allowed to use special tools. The third part has been removed and the team hasn't seen the worst part yet, which is the most dangerous part. This version, the engine and the entire hybrid system need to be removed because of the issue underneath, but we'll look at that later. For now, the work is progressing well. The new connection was installed, then tightened, and the rubber cover was put back in place. The external connection was also installed. The brakes are fine, but the hose for the front suspension system is broken, so he's disconnecting them now. This is the brake line, and this is the hose for the front suspension system. The third part has been removed, and the car is now ready for the installation of new parts. Now he's securing the control arms. Ferrari had removed the old ones and applied a fixing agent. Here we see him applying the fixing agent and then installing the new ones. Ferrari's design doesn't hold the control arms with regular bolts. They use special bolts to secure the alignment spacers. All these bolts were broken. So the important thing now is that he'll move on to the brakes. He'll remove the caliper, then the brake disc, and check the drum. Initially, he finds it to be fine and usable. It's running, but as expected, the wheel hub is damaged, though some parts are still usable. Also, from the look of it, the suspension strut is bent, but it's manageable to disassemble it piece by piece. To replace the strut, they'll have to remove the spring, which requires a special clip. However, the owner decided to remove it dangerously without one. So the old strut was removed and the new one will be installed the same way, but it's missing the special bushing. They brought in a Ferrari, used a piston, removed the bushing from the old one, and installed it on the new one. This particular version has very low mileage, around 4,000 miles. The system is being quickly reassembled and the old spacers will be temporarily installed and then adjusted. Next, the active suspension system is connected, the front lift hose is attached, and the anti-roll bar connector is attached behind it. This connector is intact, so it can be used again normally. So far, the progress is clear, and there's a little more to come. Important things they got rid of, such as the wheel axle being assembled and some special holes for the connections. The next step was to empty the oil from the brakes. This story is done via a computer or a vacuum, and in the super sport versions like this one, the brake system must be ready, because without oil pressure, the car will not start at all. After that, they brought a very cheap used tire for 50 pounds, which is not suitable for proper rotation, but it is enough for him to walk in the car, because they will not use these wheels again at all. Now he connects the battery and goes to find the light on the meter, but unfortunately, here a malfunction has appeared in the hybrid system, and also the screens are not working. The electricity is not complete and something is wrong. It's clear that the safety fuse, the pyro fuse, cuts off the electricity. This happens after accidents on a regular basis, but this time it cut off almost everything. Even the testing device is not working. Something for him is that the car is completely turned off, so they leave it on the charger, hoping that the issue will be resolved. But after hours, there will be no use. It's expected that all the sensors must be installed and also more than one part or piece or safety system, such as, for example, lanterns and all lights. Because if the computer knows how to read a copy, they must reassemble the entire car now. This is the same thing that happened with other cars, but this story doesn't happen often. This second day will be their last day there. The car is currently on 4 wheels. It wouldn't start and the handbrake was engaged, so they had to release the handbrake. This was a crucial step for it to move. They removed the electric motor for the system and freed the brake pads. They did this on both sides, so the car was now ready to move. It would be greased from Obros to Greece and then to the UK, where they would discover the true extent of the problem after an inspection. After 6 months, the car finally arrived, but the journey was only just beginning. First, they would clean it of the dust from the trip, then take it to the garage and start removing the doors and the rear quarter panel. Here, they would see damage to the chassis as well as many broken wires and lathes. There was a hole in the floor underneath, but it was repairable, so they had to remove the underbody protection. Here, the true extent of the damage would become apparent. Some parts would need to be unscrewed and others would be welded. At this point, it was essential to remove the motor and the hybrid system so they could easily access all the components from the back. The rear wheel hub, fender flares, and turbocharger coils are broken. The chassis appears sturdy, but its design is flawed. Some parts can be removed while others remain intact. The good news is that the rear bumper looks completely undamaged, but it needs to be removed for the repair process. The active spoiler also needs to be removed, and the roof cover behind them. The car is very lightweight, with some parts made of flexible materials. The rear quarter panel is held in place with bolts, rivets, and welding, and the roof might also need to be removed. The whole thing is a complex system of wires and hoses because the car is turbocharged and hybrid, so there is a lot of complexity. The bad news is that the biggest problems and most of the work will be in the rear. He already ordered a lot of parts, and after discussing it with his father, he decided that the entire front of the car can be repaired easily. To remove the rear quarter panel correctly, he needs to know exactly how the roof is secured, and to do that, he'll have to remove the interior. Or the entire interior was damaged from the inside, and this was bound to happen anyway. So the first thing they did was remove the seats. The seat, as expected from a Ferrari supercar, would be made of carbon fiber, very lightweight, and its design is also very nice. Most of the interior was completely intact, but after removing this seat, they went to the other side and started removing the passenger seat. So both seats were outside, revealing the view underneath. But they were almost certain that there shouldn't be a large bulge in the carpet, but that was where the hole in the floor was. Here we have the airbag deployed in the steering wheel and also the airbag in the dashboard. Because of the impact, a lever in the dashboard broke, and this break in turn broke the windshield. Also, the curtain airbags on both sides deployed. So, in order to remove the carpet, they first had to remove the center console. The good thing is that this is considered easy in this version. There are some screws hidden under the cup holders. After disconnecting the power outlets with a few screws, he knows how to remove the entire console because it's not fixed to the dashboard. Next comes the carpet on the back, which also needs to be removed. There's a decorative piece on top, so he removes that first. Then he can reach the screws and remove the carpet or cover. Finally, there's the ceiling panel, which needs to be removed to see how the ceiling is secured. There are some screws on the back and some on the front, so he unscrews all the accessories holding it to the ceiling, like the sunshades, mirrors, and living room lights. Then he knows how to pull them out, and they slide off, revealing the curtain tiebacks, one on each side, connecting to each other along the ceiling. Their mounting brackets are located here, and since there are no cuts or cracks, he can easily remove them. They are all Allen key design screws. He removes the airbags from behind, and after disassembling them, he sends them to the airbag team. He explains that this team can re-roll the airbags, replace the cylinder, and reset the system, ensuring they function flawlessly. This, he says, is much cheaper than buying new airbags from Ferrari. The same applies to seatbelts.
During an accident, a small explosive charge detonates, pulling the driver and passenger backwards in their seats to prevent the airbags from directly impacting them. These seatbelts can be removed, the small detonating component replaced, and the car functions normally again. He removes the curtain airbags and will also remove the seatbelts and send them all to the airbag team. Once the headliner is removed, the process becomes much easier. After completing this task and returning to the floor, he clearly notices a hole in the floor. The armored floorboard and the passenger were very lucky that no rock hit them badly, because the opening is directly to the floor, and the material the floorboard is made of is quite thin, so he's not surprised it got a hole. However, the hole cut the seat wires, but that can be easily repaired. It's clear from looking at the floorboard that it's held in place with a rivet or screws. The question is whether this piece is attached from above or below and whether it can be purchased separately. He's not sure, but luckily he found that he had ordered this piece before when he first bought the project. It's a floorboard or interior panel specifically for the Ferrari 296 FS. And he says he doesn't know exactly what it's made of, but it's very lightweight. The layers are probably a mixture of materials, possibly plastic, aluminum, and fiberglass, but it's definitely designed to be rust-proof. So now he needs to this part is known for its installation, as most of the car's design uses riveting or rivets, and the floor is no different. The visible points often have riveting points, and there are a great many of them. The easiest way to remove them, as we've seen many times before, is to grind down the rivet head and then push it down. This drilling process will certainly be difficult because the riveting or rivets are made of a new material.
It was very strong, so to make things easier, he started cutting the damaged part of the floor completely. This gave him a better working area so he could then reach the rest of the rivets. After doubling this section, he used a hammer and chisel to separate the broken floor from the intact parts it was connected to. These parts would remain in place and wouldn't be removed. After a while, the old floor was almost ready to come out, and the rest of the work had to be done from underneath. Now, after much effort, the old floor or board was removed, but the new floor hadn't been installed yet. The area had to be cleaned very well, and he had to make sure that there wasn't a single rivet or any old traces left. The new board had to be inserted and slid in a specific way, either loosening or fitting under the reinforcement parts and over other parts. But after it was installed correctly, there wouldn't be any holes or openings in it, so he had to drill through the old hole marks. Then they install all the rivets and secure them. They also installed some chair screws to tighten the reinforcement parts to the new flooring. After making sure it was in place, they started drilling all the holes or openings and also short rivets in the thin sections, trying to imitate the original factory installation. The look is strange now, but after the sealer or waterproofing, it will be very close to the original. So the flooring is installed, but clearly different in color. One side is black and the other side is the color of the primer. So they decide to take it to the plumber to fix all the colors, and then it's sealed with a sealer. But before doing that, they have to remove the airbag unit because it contains the accident data and needs to be removed. After removing the unit, they started painting underneath. They got a matching color and put it in a spray can, and the color turned out very close. After the paint dried, they started sealing the adhesive to prevent water from getting in. For these areas, the design is completely random and doesn't resemble a factory at all, but ultimately he'll do the job required. If you recall, he's not at all an expert in this area, as we saw with the BMW M5. He knows that the factory uses a very expensive automated machine to ensure the sealant comes out perfectly. On the other hand, he uses a silicone gun and a brush. So, as we said, the appearance isn't important. Performance is what matters. The work from below is successful, even if the aesthetics aren't 100%. To complete the work on the rear quarter panel, the roof needs to be removed, and he's obviously apprehensive about this step because the roof is very expensive. From what I've heard, it costs around $8,000. So far, the progress is good and he's happy with it, but let's remember that the car hasn't started yet, and that's the biggest problem here. Despite all the repairable damage, the car won't start. He doesn't even know it's connected to the electrical system. This also happened with Ferrari's assistant, but now they're alone. Currently, starting the car might be the least of their worries because the damage and work they still need to do is in the chassis. If they try to fix it, they'll have to access every part of the car, and by agreement, they won't be able to complete the Ferrari if this structural part isn't repaired.
To remove this part from the frame, they have to remove the engine and hybrid battery. The problem is they're not sure if anyone has done this before, and this might be the first time an engine like this has been removed from a car since it was made. This means they have to figure it out themselves. The first step is to remove the engine. They disconnected the airbox that's mounted there, then they disconnected the fuel line that brings fuel from the pump to each tank. All these lines will be removed with the engine, and that's it. They disconnect everything that will remain in its place, but the engine and transmission will be moved. The next step is the cooling lines, and then all the high voltage lines, which they don't know how to handle, but they'll definitely try to. See that the car has a twin turbo and is a hybrid, meaning it has a lot of cooling lines. The hybrid battery is behind the seats and behind the cabin, and then in the fuel tanks. Also, I think this is the inverter. They knew all this because it resembles other cars they built. Here we see a small green connector. Disconnecting this connector cuts off the battery and prevents any fire, but now the car is supposed to be 100% safe. The next step is to remove the hybrid battery. The design of this battery extends the length of the entire car, so they disconnect all the orange lines. There's one line that goes from back to front. They disconnected it and removed a trim to see exactly where the line goes. The battery is raised from underneath and suspended, held by 2 screws from inside, so they have to disconnect those too. Things like the battery's cooling system are removed. Then they remove and drain the coolant. After that, they remove the lower front layer to disconnect the front cable, and they do disconnect it. So the battery will now fall if you loosen the 2 screws inside. This will give them more space in front of the engine, so they hope the car won't fall off the lift when they remove all the weight of the battery. They have to disconnect it because a safety valve inside exploded. They go inside. This was just a guess, but it's clear there are large screws holding the battery in place. They tried to loosen them and managed to lift the car, but the battery remained on the tool. So the battery is removed, but before they finish removing the engine, they inspected the battery first. After removing the cover, it doesn't contain much, but it's considered heavy, about 60 kilograms, and takes up a lot of space. There's a possibility that there's a blow-off valve inside that prevents high-speed driving. He gets in the car at the time of the accident, so if they want the Ferrari to start, they need to find this valve. They're looking in several places and from several directions, expecting to find the valve, but so far they haven't found it. They're testing with a multimeter to make sure everything is working properly and there's current, so the battery is fine and there is no fuse. But they removed the bottom cover to be sure, and indeed there was nothing there. They went back.
They removed the battery cover and confirmed it was fine and just needed charging. They then turned back to the car to work on repairing the body. If they could fix it, they could reassemble everything and see if the car would run. Their immediate goal was to disconnect all the wires and bolts holding the parts together so they could mount the car on supports. If everything was in order, the rear section would easily separate from the front. They lifted the Ferrari's body, leaving the rest on the supports. The engine and frame were separated at the rear. Now they had reached the helical stage, but this part was a bit messy and damaged. They didn't need to remove everything because they could install the new parts or have someone else do it, so it wouldn't take long. However, there was a problem with this section, so they had to remove the fuel tank to start working on it. The structure was quickly finished with the tank issue, and they now had complete access to the damage. They would definitely disconnect all the pipes in the entire rear quarter panel. At that point, they realized they didn't need to remove the roof because the rear quarter panel was attached underneath it. However, the support above the roof was weak and they could disconnect it. This allowed them to work on the rear quarter panel. They would cut a small section for the new installation. The new installation would save them time and they wouldn't risk damaging the very expensive roof. They would disconnect the damaged pipes to access the damage. Then his father explained how they would carry out the repair. There were cooling lines for the battery and air that needed replacing, so the parts would be cut into pieces and cleaned before welding. The welding would be done across the entire thickness of the material. Then they would add aluminum pieces for extra reinforcement. Inside the cabin, they had to remove the dashboard because the airbag casing had exploded. Of course, they removed the airbag from the steering wheel. The next step was to remove everything they needed from the dashboard. They easily accessed the airbag without damaging any wires. Then they removed the instrument panel and the upper part of the dashboard, installing a used one that came with its airbag. This cost them around £2,000, which was better than waiting for more expensive Ferrari parts. They installed the new dashboard and the instrument panel, securing it well. After that, they installed all the buttons and covered the console. Here they laid the new carpet that had been replaced. Now, they checked the airbag computer and reinstalled it safely at the bottom of the car. On top of it, they placed all the carpets and covers. They also installed the center console and connected all the ports, wires, and seats. So the dashboard was now perfectly aligned. The next step was installing the airbags for the new steering system. Everything is now starting to return to its normal shape again. These are the same airbags found in the Ferrari Roma and the Ferrari A1T, so it was relatively easy to find them used. Now they will take the welding and make it even and smooth, then they put metal pieces and covered it with them, leaving 3 layers of welding. So 3 layers of welding means 3 welding skills. But its owner, Bobby, says that this is not necessary because his welding alone was enough, and Ferrari itself does the same thing in similar places. So now they prepared the fuel tank and installed the engine and the entire rear part, so they finished the gearbox, chassis, and body. After it was adjusted, they put the bolts in place from the top, tightened all the body bolts from below, and the fuel tank bolts. Then they connected the rear brake lines and started installing all the wires. Bobby worked on the right side, and then Matt took over the left side. They connected the oil lines and the electrical connector for the electric motor. Finally, they went back to installing the battery. They tightened the bolts on top of the mounting bracket and connected all the electrical lines and the ground wire. Then they connected the fuel control unit and made some adjustments to the connections because they couldn't order them completely from Ferrari. After that, they installed the cooling pipes, the control unit, and everything around the rear quarter panel. Currently, the battery is charging, so we see the blue light, which means charging is working. They waited about half an hour and then tried to start the engine. They noticed that all the gauges worked, but the start button was missing. Then they installed the safety accessories for starting the engine: the door, the bumpers, and the lights. When everything was connected, the car's gauges started working, but there was still a problem with the battery system. So they went back to the same point we discussed at the beginning. They suspected a faulty valve was causing the problem, so they opened the battery again and examined the control unit. They found a control chip that might be the cause. They will send it to the Airjet team to see if they can repair it and return it. Up until now, all of this is theoretical and they're not 100% sure.